Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to yet another session on Hinduism. My name is Nishit Kotak. I'm here with Sita from the Hindu Academy team. Welcome, Sita.
Thank you.
And for those of you who are just joining us for the very first time, you might be interested in following us on YouTube. We are available on youtube.com/Hindu Academy. We're also available on Facebook at facebook.com/Hindu Academy. We are live on both those channels, and we run for about 1 hour. We run on a focused topic of discussion around the topic of Hinduism. And what we do is we start off with a focus video, and we have a little discussion around that video. And after that, we go into live Q&A session with answering questions that you, the viewers, have been posting in the comments area on Facebook and on YouTube. As always, thank you so much for joining us today, taking the time out of your busy day here in England. We are having a bank holiday weekend, and it's a glorious one with the sun out, and we are finally seeing temperatures in 20-21 degrees. So it's a very nice weekend here. And without taking up much of your time, let's get started by checking the latest video that we've got today. The focus is on understanding the law of karma. So here's the video, and I hope you enjoy it.
Babies are innocent. Baby born, okay, it's nothing. It's his previous life, maybe some percentage, but maybe 80 or 90% of the parents, maybe they got testing, or I don't know what is exactly. Thank you.
These are very good questions. I'm pleased that we asked Sujit Bhai to ask the question. They are very, very good questions. And I think a lot of people in the lot of viewers are struggling with these ideas. If you see an innocent child suffering with some serious illness, let's say, just born and suffering, because we are Hindus, we immediately say, oh, the law of karma is taking effect, the poor chap, he must have done bad things in his life, so that the poor chap is suffering. This would be the immediate response of an average Hindu. This is terrible, terrible. How dare you blame this baby for the sufferings undergoing? Don't you realize? What happens to the young child is not the result of just his action, but a lot of other things that combine together and produce that illness or the sickness. A lot of other things have all. Don't you notice, look, in your own lives, the amount of effort you put in and the result you get is strongly influenced by a lot of other things, whether your parents were able to pay the fees and send you to the top school, or whether your mom helped you with the homework. All these things had to kind of influence and in a way interact with you before you produce a result. Your own contribution was perhaps trivial, literally 1%. 99% is the environment and other features that in a way infringed on you and your situation. In the same way, when somebody is suffering, somebody's got illness, somebody's got disabled, if you blame that person and say, you deserve it, this is terrible, don't you do that, don't you ever, Hindus, don't you ever dare do it. You don't understand the law of karma. Infinite things almost happen, combine together, produce one result. And the contribution of that individual may be very trivial, very little. So don't blame the poor chap. Never vilify anybody in that manner. Never look down on anybody. This is the mature idea of law of karma. So I'm saying a lot of things are adding together where your contribution is also important, but it's also minor. Recognize it. So don't blame yourself. Don't be indifferent to your own suffering or indifferent to suffering of others, saying in the name of law of karma, nobody deserves it. That's the first part. So be very careful about how you express the idea of law of karma and do not vilify or undermine anybody. Second part is very important. I like this. You see, I can see the heart here kind of getting grieved that here is Ramakrishna, here is Raman Maharshi. Both of them suffer from cancer. You might ask yourself, did they do bad karma in the past life? They are getting caught out? Oh no, my friend, this is the answer. In reality, neither of these individuals, despite the thing, oh, I've got pain here, despite that, neither of these individuals felt the pain. I said, oh, they didn't feel the pain, they had cancer. One in the throat and one on the shoulder. Oh dear, no, don't you realize? These people, when they touch base with the spirit, the idea that I am the Atman, I am the spirit, they're established in that state throughout. Once you get touch base with it, you can't let go because you discovered it. You can't go. It can't be undone. You're done. Once you do that, physical suffering appears so trivial. It's like a little mosquito bite or something. It hardly hits them. So please do not go under the... Have you seen, when you see some of the films, in the Hindi films, used to come with bhaktas, all these Prahlad, suffering and crying. You say, oh dear, poor me, I don't want to be a bhakta. In fact, that's what my reaction. I said, these are terrible. These guys undergo such severe testing. I'd rather not go through that process. Have you noticed all the bhaktas? They cry and they get leprosy and they get everything until they sing to Mother Goddess and things sort out. I don't want to go through that whole process. I said, I don't want to be bhakta. I'd rather be atheist. I used to be frightened of all these films. They show the poor heroes undergoing such suffering. You say, oh, look, reality. When you look at all these great bhaktas or the great saints or the great prophets of Hindu religion, let me tell you, let me guarantee you, they did not suffer. How can they suffer? They've tasted the bliss. They are above it. So all this is just make-believe, a little bit external. They make a show. Oh. And one day Ramakrishna was telling one of his devotees, you see, I fell down in this hand, because this guy used to go into meditation while he was walking sometimes and would topple over. He broke his arm. So they put a bandage, a plaster or something. And he used to go around and tell one devotee, look, it's painful. The devotee said, painful? It's not painful to you, is it? He said, you rascal, you caught me out. He was playing along. They do not feel. So don't ever think, oh, these poor people, they must do that. Why do they suffer? They don't suffer. We suffer. Because we are stuck with the body. And the bodily problems bother us. These people are beyond the body. They don't suffer. Don't you for a moment think that, what suffering? Once you tasted Atman, you suffer. What's the point of getting the Atman then? They don't suffer. We are caught in the trap. Until we are linked to the body, we pay a price. But once you've broken that link, that price is gone. You don't have to pay a tax for the body, as Ramakrishna said. You are beyond. You get offshore account. You don't pay tax.
That was such an interesting video, and there are so many little golden nuggets you can pick out from it. It's quite a complex concept to grasp. It seems very simple, but it really isn't very simple to understand for many people. It's misconceived. So, Sita, what's your take on this subject? Understanding the law of karma.
Yes, so it's one of those things that's very easy to misunderstand. As you say, it seems very simple on the outside, but you have to develop a clear understanding of it to make sure that you don't misunderstand it and then judge other people or prejudge other people when you have no idea of what their previous history is. So the thing with the law of karma is, yes, you try and do as much good action as you can, but remember that if you are suffering, it's not necessarily because you have done bad things in your previous life or you're a bad person. This is just the way the cookie crumbles, as Dad always says. This is the way that life is. We never have a happy, smooth life for the whole of our life. Life is full of jagged edges. And that's an inevitable part of life, something that we all have to sort of come to terms with. And the law of karma sort of helps us give a handle on the fact that a huge variety of different elements come together for any one action to take place. So there have been so many different people have come together to come here at this present moment now. And so many factors are involved in that process. So it's one of those things that's very complex, although it appears to be very simple. And another thing to bear in mind is that actually we shouldn't use the law of karma to blame people, to victimize people, even victimize ourselves. It's very easy to say, oh, I can see somebody suffering. And actually, Glenn Hoddle in this country, in the UK, about 20 odd years ago, made a comment. He saw a disabled person and said, oh, he probably deserves it for what he's done in a previous life. And there was outrage. It was a scandal because he had misunderstood the law of karma. Because that person is suffering or disabled does not mean that they are a bad person or they have done bad in their previous life. As we have said, a huge variety of factors come together for certain things to happen. And this is the nature of life, essentially. So we have to sort of bear that in mind. And another thing about the law of karma is we shouldn't use it to make ourselves feel sort of down about ourselves. We shouldn't use it to tread ourselves down. We should use it to lift ourselves up, because there will be times in all of our lives where we all go through a great deal of suffering. Lots of bad things happen to us at the same time. It's an inevitable part of life. So when that moment comes, make sure that we do not think, oh, this is because I'm a bad person, I've done bad things in my previous life or even in my current life. Use that as an opportunity to say, look, I'm facing these challenges. I'm going to be strong. I'm essentially Atman. I'm going to rise above all of these challenges and become stronger as a result. So we should use the law of karma as a source of empowerment rather than something to pull us down. So I think that's very important. A lot of good things that we can draw from the law of karma.
Superb. So if we can just maybe take a few questions from the viewers. So somebody's asked, what is my karma?
Your karma is essentially what you're doing now, the actions that you are taking now, which will hopefully have a long-term sort of benefit in the future. I mean, we get sometimes short-term results and sometimes we get long-term results. So a short-term result is, oh, I bought an ice cream and I enjoyed it and it was very nice. Something long-term and beneficial could be, I want to learn how to play the piano, and you have to put in a lot of hard work and effort. And in the long term, that will pay, you'll reap the benefits of that. You'll become a very good piano player. And actually, sometimes this goes across lives. So this is where you get the sort of, child prodigies, people who are excellent at maths or music, and it just comes naturally to them from such a young age. And you think, surely this can't be just down to genes or mutations or the environment. There's something that that person has carried from a previous life. They've developed that sense of discipline and they're reaping the benefits in their current life. So people like Mozart or Einstein, who have, who are geniuses in their own right, makes you think that possibly in their previous life they've put in a great deal of effort and discipline, and now they're reaping the benefits of that.
Wonderful. So now we all understand the concept of karma in a very basic sense, is what goes around comes around. So the question would be, how can I create better karma?
I think the way to create better karma is literally just do what you can, do the next right thing. As I watch Frozen a lot with my daughter, and that's actually what's sort of talked about in Frozen. Just do the next right thing. You are in a complex situation. Life is complicated. The only thing that you can do is just use your heart as your sense of intuition and do the next right thing. And hopefully we just could take the next right step and hopefully lead a good life with as little suffering as we can help. But it's one of those things, you have no idea what's going to be around the corner. So we do the best we can, essentially.
Fantastic. Now, one question somebody asked is it not an injustice for somebody to come into this world and suffer for things that they've maybe done in a past life? So they're paying for their karma of actions done in a previous life, when they have no recollection about these things in their current life.
Yes, I mean, it does in that sense seem unfair. But the important thing to remember is one thing doesn't necessarily correlate exactly with the other thing. So you may not have done anything bad in your previous life, but you are still going through a difficult time in this life. That doesn't mean that you have done bad things in your previous life. As we said, there's so many different factors involved. Your actions possibly have 1% or 5% impact on your future and what's going to happen to you. So bad things happen. The important thing is not to speculate on the past or speculate what happened. Why is this happening to me? You're in this situation. Just sort of be strong and come out of it. And that's the way you create good karma, rather than speculating about where this has happened or where this has come from, essentially.
Amazing. So let's have another look at this, in the concept of karma. We have this thing that, okay, if I am going to have an impact in my current life because of what I did before, is it a fatalistic thing to say, okay, my life is already predetermined because of actions I did in the previous one, then I don't need to do anything now, everything is predetermined? Is it a fatalistic way of looking at things?
Yes, it is. So that's a very defeatist and sort of putting yourself down for no reason at all. So we believe we are in charge of our own destiny, and some people believe in horoscopes and all of that, but the Vivekanand way is to say, just forget all of that, throw that in the bin. We are in charge of our own destiny, essentially, and that's what the law of karma does. So if you understand it in the correct way, it's very empowering, because you are in charge of what you do next. In this present moment, you are in charge, and not some kind of horoscope or what you have or haven't done in a previous life or in previous years in your current life. You are in charge of what is happening now. So focus on the now, and you will hopefully lead a very productive life, essentially.
Absolutely, and that is very, very true. We can only work with where we are at the present moment. Nothing we can do can influence the past, but we don't know anything about the future. So this is where we are at the moment, so what we do with it. So how does this concept of karma compare with the other Abrahamic faiths? There was the concept of heaven and hell, and right and wrong and so on. But we've got the concept of karma, which is across like lifetimes.
Yeah, that's right. So in terms of Abrahamic traditions, they obviously believe in the idea of heaven and hell, and they believe that there is a God sitting in judgment, watching over their lives and sort of keeping a checklist or a record of all the good things and bad things they've done. And when that person passes away, they reap the benefits or they reap the punishment of what they've done. Whereas in Hinduism, it's not so simplistic. In a way, it's quite empowering, because actually there's no God deciding what we do is right or wrong, good or bad. It's essentially up to us. So we are in charge of our present moment. Now is the time we should follow our heart, do what we think is the right thing, and just take one step at a time, and hopefully lead a very positive life, rather than sort of speculating what's happened before or what's going to happen in the future. Just focus on the now. And it actually reminds me of what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita with the Karma Marg, the path of Karma Yoga. Offer the fruits of all your actions to God. So don't think, oh, I'm going to get this and I'm going to get this as a result. Just offer the result of all your actions to God, so that you sort of remain in a neutral position, because that's the way you remain sthita prajna. That's how you have a steady mind. Because if you sort of go through this roller coaster of ups and downs in your life, you're never going to be happy. The high is just going to be a very temporary high, and the low is going to be, temporary low. So it's very easy to say, I'm one that goes on the roller coaster all the time, and I struggle with this idea of trying to remain of steady mind, sthita prajna, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita. But we have to try and offer the fruits of our results to God, focus on the now, and try and be steady and not speculate about the past or the future.
They're absolutely so right. These things are going to count over a period of time, and you have to understand that you're human. You will stumble. As long as overall you're on the right path,
Yes.
things will be good for you. So when we're exploring karma, what are examples of things that give you good karma and things that may be giving you bad karma?
I think things that give you good karma are essentially things which make you feel sort of closer to your true nature, essentially. So any kind of positive work, like you're doing good work in the community, you are sort of, even doing painting, you're doing music, you're reading something very inspiring, all of these things which sort of help you touch base with your true nature. That moment you get when you are so engrossed in the activity that you forget, oh, this is me and this is my body and this is what I'm having for lunch. When you're in that moment and you just forget everything, that's that moment where you're touching base with your true self. So any kind of activity which makes you feel closer to your true nature is good karma. And anything which draws you away from that, so mugging somebody or hurting somebody, that's going to take you away from your true nature. So we focus on things which help us sort of reach that moment of just forgetting everything and just being absorbed in that moment.
Fantastic. So karma is based around the concept of action and reaction. So if I give you a situation, a hypothetical situation, say if I were to run over a dog accidentally, do I have to suffer the karmic consequences? And B, if I have to put down my dog as a result of severe illness, will I suffer bad karma as a result?
It's very difficult to sort of have an exact correlation with these kinds of things. And as we've said before, it's probably not a good idea to speculate because we don't know, and we probably never will know what the result of our actions are in that sense, because there's so many other factors involved as well. Maybe that dog, I don't know, he shouldn't have been in that place at that time, and it's an unfortunate accident. It's not something that you intended to do. So although it's very difficult to sort of, live with that sort of action, we just have to do the best we can, do the next right thing, as we said. So just sort of, I don't know, take him to the vet or hospital, try and get him better, and do the best we can in that particular moment. So it's very difficult to say, oh no, am I going to suffer now as a result? Don't sort of wish suffering upon yourself. Just do what you can to make things right, essentially.
So, the concept of karma is very complex, and we have got some very sensitive topics that touch upon this. So we've got the topics of, for example, suicide, we've got euthanasia, we've got abortion, we've even got people who are maybe, say, transgender. And I remember my conversations with Jaybai on these topics and how it could be as a result of the karma you've got from your past life. You talked about people who are musical prodigies, for example, or maths or chess or some sport or something like that. They carry forward the skills and the refinement and the discipline from a previous birth, like they said, right? But let's explore a bit further. If you could expand on this, the topics we spoke about, which is euthanasia, abortion, transgender, suicide. How does this all impact with karma?
Yeah, it's a huge topic, essentially. So in terms of things like euthanasia, it's sometimes you sort of get to a point where somebody you love or yourself even is in a very complex situation health-wise. And when you sort of have to weigh up the decision of how is this person going to live, or how am I going to live if I have to live in a vegetative state, or if I'm going to be in a lot of pain for the rest of my life, is it worth it? Or is it better to just carry on for the sake of my family? So a lot of these decisions affect a lot of people. And it's one of those things that Hinduism gives a lot of flexibility to. It doesn't say, you must carry on living regardless, or vice versa, you must die in that particular circumstance. It says, let your conscience be your guide, because every individual circumstance is very different, and we can't put a rubber stamp in saying this is good or this is bad. We have to do what's best in that particular situation. So another sort of example I thought of is, say, there's a mother and she's pregnant with a child, and the decision comes, do you save the life of the mother or the life of the child? You can't just say, oh, one life is more important than another. It's one of those things that you have to let your heart sort of guide you in that particular situation. And we're not like other traditions where we sort of rubber stamp and say, you must do this, you must do this. Hinduism gives a lot of flexibility and says, this is a very individual case, it's a very delicate case. It's up to you to know the right thing to do. And that's all you can do. If you are sort of acting with the best possible intention, even if it involves switching off a life support machine, then hopefully you won't incur any bad karma, because you're doing it with the best intention to avoid any kind of suffering. But one other thing is, in terms of suicide especially, that's one thing that Hinduism would probably say it's probably best to avoid something like suicide, because in a way that's sort of trying to escape from your life problems. And we believe in reincarnation, so those problems are not going to go away in your next life. So although you may be facing all sorts of challenges, Hinduism does advise don't commit suicide, because you're just transferring those problems on for later, essentially. Best to deal with them now in the best way that you can. We're not perfect by any means, but we just do what we can to sort of resolve our human condition in the best way we can.
Absolutely. And in the past year and a half, ever since we've had the global pandemic, things have been difficult for a lot of people, and mental health issues have come to the forefront. And so I'd like to just reach out to anybody who's out there and feeling that they're a little bit down or depressed or something like that, do reach out to friends, family, anybody that you can confide in. Talk to a professional if you need to. But yeah, don't take the drastic step of suicide. That's certainly not going to help anybody. So, okay, coming back to karma. Now, when we have a physical body, we've got a brain, we've got, the body, and then when we pass away, we're reborn. So how does karma transfer from one body to another? Is it via the soul?
Yeah, so when a person passes away, their jivatma is around. It sort of detaches from their current body and sort of manifests in a new body. So in that sense, all of your character, all of the things, good things, bad things you've done will sort of have that impression on your character, and that is the thing that comes with you in your next life. And there's actually a really wonderful Buddhist story, which I won't go too much into depth on, about a mad king who randomly calls people from his kingdom to the palace to get them killed. And there's one person who is randomly summoned by the king, and he starts to panic. Who am I going to go to? Who am I going to go to? The first person he goes to is his supposedly his best friend. And his best friend says, I'm not going to come with you. You're on your own. Sorry, that's just the way of the king. Sorry. And he closes the door. Then he goes to his second best friend. He says, please come with me. Please come with me. And his friend says, okay, I'll only come with you up to the palace gates, but I can't come any further than that. And then the third person, who is barely an acquaintance, he goes to him and says, please help me. The king is calling me to die. And this acquaintance says, not only will I come with you, but I will plead on your behalf to the king to say what a good person you are. And this story actually sort of gives perspective to life, because that king is the mad king is the king of death. Death comes on us randomly and we have no idea when it's coming. And the person who we think is our best friend is money and possession and property. We go to the money and property, it's going to sit in our bank account. It's not going to come with us in our next life. The next most important thing we think is our family and friends. They can only come as far as the cremation or the graveyard, and they can't come beyond that. But the thing that comes with us is who we think is our acquaintance. Is actually our character. That's the thing who we place least importance on, but is actually the most important thing, because it's going to come with us to the door of death and sort of plead on our behalf and help us lead a good future life. So in a sense, it gives us a bit of perspective on how important it is to build a good character. Sorry, I went on a bit. I love that story.
Amazing. So yeah, final question now on this topic, because we've spent quite a bit of time on it. It is a vast topic. The question is this: is there any way that one can influence or interfere with the law of karma?
Well, I don't think it's a case of influencing or interfering. It's just the free flow of actions and reactions and so many different consequences all coming together at the same time. So all we can do is just sort of take the next right step at every present moment. And that's the way that we can sort of influence it for the better, in the best way that we can, essentially.
Fabulous. Folks, thank you so very much for joining us today. You've been contributing your questions in the YouTube and Facebook area. I've been keeping a note of them. I am going back and forth as I'm answering the questions live as well. So we move on to the first question, which is from Adityan. And Adityan's asking, what do the Vedas say about reincarnation?
Yes, so this is one of the sort of key Hindu beliefs, and it's written about in the Vedas, and especially in the Bhagavad Gita, which is a summary of the Vedas. It talks about the eternal nature of the soul, the Atman, which is not born, does not die, is not cut, is not burnt. It goes on with a whole lot of descriptions. So it's one of those things that is not affected by the physical world at all in that sense. And it's one of those things that's read about in cremations and funeral grounds. It gives us comfort that person hasn't just disappeared. There's just their body is like old clothes that they have to discard and put on new clothes. So the Vedas do talk about this, and it gives us great comfort in difficult times.
Fantastic. So one of our regular viewers on Facebook, Indu Day, has a comment. She's saying that on one hand, Sita, you are right in saying don't blame everything on karma in this birth. But the Mahabharata gives us plenty of examples of where characters were born in this birth because of actions in their previous births or boons and things like that.
Yes, yeah, it's true. As I said, I mean, there's lots of this sort of mythology interwoven into the Mahabharata, but what it does is it carries the message of the law of karma. It gives us something to work towards to make sure that we carry on doing good work in our current life in the best possible way, because it will possibly have an impact on our future life. So obviously, in the Mahabharata story, they can't link for 100% sure one life to another, but it gives us guidance and it gives us that sort of link that essentially do the best we can in our current life to help us in the future.
Fabulous. Shraddha Shankaranarayan is asking, how would you analyze karma in terms of animal research for drug development that may go on to save many lives?
This is the thing, it's one of those ethical dilemmas. But what Hinduism does, it offers a sort of a spectrum of sanctity of life, essentially. So human life is sort of considered to be the most sacred. And then you go down to the animal life and then plant life and then insect life and then little bugs and single cell organisms. So it's an unfortunate sort of circumstance. And unfortunately, this is the way life is, that sometimes we have to choose between the life of an animal or the life of a human. And Hinduism would sort of suggest that the life of the human is more sacred in that sense. So if there is going to be animal research, obviously, hopefully, that research will be done in the least harmful way to that animal. But if it's going to save many human lives, then that's probably a very beneficial thing to do. So we have to sort of weigh up the consequences and sort of do what our conscience dictates.
I suppose it is a very big dilemma as well.
Yeah.
So we got a question from Ishan. It's one that I remember we used to get quite often with Jaybai when we started off these live sessions about 3 years back. He's saying, why do you people live in far off lands rather than living in your own country? I am assuming he's from India, and helping your people like Vivekananda did. Over to you.
I don't really know what to say to that. I mean, I guess because, well, I was born here, so I didn't really have a choice in the matter. And you're just born where you are born, essentially. And you just feel lucky that, you know, you're brought up in an upbringing where you are connected to your religion, your culture, and you have a spiritual upbringing. So you feel lucky in that sense to have that connection, because it gives you a grounding and it makes your life more enriched and fulfilled. So wherever you are in the world, hopefully it doesn't matter. You can live that sort of spiritual life and do the best you can for the people around you and around the world, essentially.
Fabulous. Folks, thank you so very much once again for joining us. Please do keep your questions and your feedback coming in on the comments area. Just want to say a quick shout out to Ajit, Induday, Dilip Jha. We've got Harry Patel, Aman Chandra, all on Facebook. And Aman's passing some feedback for you, saying, Sita, you're doing a fantastic job in answering the questions.
Great. Thank you.
That you're very articulate, just like Jaybai, and with all the right answers. So some fantastic feedback for you there. And so the next question is from one of our viewers over on YouTube. And this is from Sujay Shrestha. And the question is, what exactly happens after moksha? Because it says, Vedas talk about moksha or salvation, but if there is no rebirth, then what does salvation mean? Once you achieve moksha and you're out of the cycle, then what's the meaning of?
Yeah, so moksha is actually a bit different to salvation. Moksha is sort of the destruction of delusion that you think you are the body and the mind and you're living this current life. Salvation is more of an Abrahamic sort of terminology, saying that you're being saved, essentially, but we are not being saved. We are just discovering our true nature, ourselves as the spirit, essentially. So when you achieve moksha, there is no need for you to be reborn again, to come down to earth and sort of continue your spiritual journey, because you have concluded your spiritual journey. There's no need for you to come back down to earth and live your life and start again in nappies and go to school and do all of that again. So essentially, once you've achieved moksha, then that's the end of it. I mean, the only sort of exception to that is sometimes you get these spiritual giants, spiritual masters who are sort of established in spirituality throughout their whole lives. And they come down to earth not just to carry on their spiritual journey, because they've already hit the jackpot, but to help people, people like Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda. There's wonderful stories. If you look at their life stories and things like that, they talk about they're going to come back down to earth just to help people. They're going to go through the suffering of going through a body and having ailments and all of that to help people become spiritually awakened. So those are the spiritual giants who will sort of, in a way, sacrifice their moksha to come down and help us get to that conclusion, essentially.
Fabulous. And speaking of spiritual giants, Rahul Mishra is asking a question. What's the best way to understand the teachings of Swami Vivekananda? Is there like a place he can start off and then go on? I know from my side, I would point him to some playlists on our YouTube channel, but Sita, you may expand on it.
Yeah, so essentially, yes, please do look at the playlist. My dad has given some wonderful sort of talks on Swami Vivekananda, who was his life passion, essentially. I mean, what I would suggest is first off, start by reading the life story of Swami Vivekananda, because it's such an inspiring story. It can really change your life, just reading his life story. And then you can go into a lot of depth in terms of his lectures that he gave in America and the England. You can read the complete works, and I've tried reading the complete works. Literally, if you just read one paragraph, it's enough to keep you thinking for a whole week. They're so deep and they're so profound. So start off with the life story, I think, and then progress on to his wonderful lectures, which are awe-inspiring.
Fabulous, fabulous. So Shankar is asking a question. Shankar's on YouTube and is asking a question. What's so unique about Hinduism?
So I think there's the unique thing about Hinduism is that it's very much open to making spiritual progress in such a variety of different ways, not only within Hinduism, because we've got so many sects within Hinduism and they all sit well together. We don't get the same level of inter-sect fighting as we do with other religions. So Hinduism is very pluralistic by nature, to the point where it accepts the validity of other religions and even non-religious pathways for making spiritual progress. And that's a very unique thing that I haven't really seen anywhere else. The fact that you can hit the jackpot spiritually through art or music or dance is just an amazing opportunity that we have in a very sort of non-theistic world that we're living in. And the other thing which is very inspiring, and it's a real sort of basis for ethics and morality in our world, is this idea of spiritual humanism, which Swami Vivekananda was a key proponent for. This idea that essentially everyone is divine, everyone is a manifestation of spirit, and the best way of doing worship is not by sort of tinkling bells in a temple, is by going out there and serving humanity. You're going to get kickbacks because people do bite, and that's unfortunately the way human nature is, but we just carry on and do the best we can to support humanity. And I think those are the unique things about Hinduism.
Fantastic. So we've got another question upcoming from Anand Wadadkar, and Anand's asking a question which is, how does one find a guru to develop the practice of karma yoga?
So I think one of those things with spirituality is that when you are ready, the guru will come to you, the right guru will come to you. They'll sort of, you'll somehow come across them and you'll be inspired by them and let them be your guide, essentially. So I think spirituality is one of those things that, the guru will come to you when you are ready, essentially. So if you're lucky enough to get the right guru, then, you will know it in your heart and they will be your guide. But the wonderful thing about Hinduism is that you don't just hold on to the guru and that's the end of the story. You've hit the jackpot spiritually. Your guru is your guide. Your guru is going to empower you to get to the point of being a Vivekananda or a Ramakrishna, essentially yourself. So it's very empowering.
Fantastic. And Indu Dey says that, the unique thing about Hinduism is that one can be one's self. and still progress spiritually and improve upon self-personality and character building. And it's the only religion that believes in all the humans around the world and that the world is one big family. Unlike some who would say there's only this prescribed way and there is no other way. So I would say in that sense, Hinduism is unique. It's all encompassing. And that's one of the unique things. Now, coming to the next question, which is from SB over on YouTube. The question is, how would you define the terms spirituality and consciousness?
Oh gosh, that's very broad topics. So first, let's start with spirituality. So spirituality is essentially that non-material basis to everything. It's the thing that we can connect to through all these variety of different human endeavors, through different religions, through prayer, through worship, through community work, whatever it is. And you sort of touch base with that and you feel inspired. You feel like you forget all the sort of barriers that you've created around yourself, that this is me and this is my name and this is where I live. You forget all of that in that particular moment and you sort of touch base with your essential nature. That's sort of that spirituality and that spiritual living. It's very difficult to explain or describe because it's one of those things that's so ethereal, but you just have to try your best to live as a spiritual life as you can. And in terms of consciousness, the Vedas sort of say that, it's very, very difficult to describe the ultimate reality, to describe God or spirit or whatever it is you want to call. But one of the things which comes closest to describing the ultimate reality is consciousness. It's that eternal witness to everything, which is sort of non-material. And it's something which is actually being sort of discovered through the cutting edge of science at the moment, this idea of quantum, that there is an observer to the universe. And it's not something that's just restricted to the Vedas and people who meditate. Physicists are coming across this, the fact that a conscious observer, when they put a conscious observer in front of two atoms, they actually change their behavior because there is an observer, which is just mind-boggling. It completely defies the laws of empirical physics and empirical science that we are aware of. So it completely blows everything out of the water. So it's that sort of non-material, ethereal thing, which is the observer to the universe, which I guess is the closest thing to describing the ultimate reality or God or spirit.
I'm going to come back to this issue of consciousness in a little bit. But, what we talked about just now about different experiences, maybe different dimensions that we may not be aware of normally, they exist. Just because we don't know, that doesn't mean they don't exist. So Shantanu is asking a question, is time and space just an illusion? Because he feels sometimes people say time is just like a time, that sometimes he hears time is like a dimension. Some people say time doesn't exist. Is it just a concept we've made up, time and space, or is it something that is beyond what we see?
According to the Vedas, they say that the universe came about through the sort of unfurling of three things, which are space, time, and causation. So it's not just space and time, which current physics talks about. It's also the idea of causation, which, it links very much to our law of karma discussion earlier. So space, time, and causation sort of unfurled at the same time, and the universe came into existence. And it's I don't think it's a construct. I think that's just how nature or how the universe unfolded. I'm not a physics expert by any means. I wish Dad was here to answer it. But the Vedas do talk about these three things unfurling at the beginning of the universe, even if there is a beginning, because that idea of beginning came with the universe.
Fantastic. Now, coming back to the question of consciousness. So I work a lot with software, and there have been massive advances in the field of artificial intelligence. I see a future where machines will be able to become self-aware. And to me, that is almost equal to consciousness. Now, it will be a different kind of consciousness than what we are used to as humans. But nevertheless, would you define that as consciousness if a machine is self-aware?
I think consciousness is possibly one of those things that can't be recreated by humans, unfortunately, because we can't even figure out what consciousness is in our current situation. I think Dad has talked about Dr. Susan Greenfield and all the research they're doing to try and find the slice of the brain which produces consciousness, and they are not able to find anything. They are not able to find where it comes from, what button it is or what nerve it is which produces consciousness. And it's just one of those ethereal things that we can't put our fingers on. So I think as hard as we try, I don't think we'll get quite to the point of it being an actual conscious observer. And there's this wonderful example that Dad used to use is, suppose there's a child who enters a room and they sort of discover a dimmer switch, and they switch the light on brighter, and the light gets brighter and brighter, and then they switch it the other way and it goes dimmer and dimmer. And suppose you break that switch, the child will automatically think, oh, you've broken the light, you've broken consciousness, you've broken the stream of consciousness. But actually what you've done is you've just broken the conduit, the channel which it was coming through. It's one of those sort of things which is always there. If you hit somebody on the head, it's just because the brain function is gone. It's not because consciousness has gone. So it's one of those things I think it'll be very impossible to recreate.
Well, it's one of those things which is a human concept. And there may be other, we used to discuss this with JY. There may be other life forms out there that we've never met or discovered, non-human. And so their version of things will be very different from ours. And that's an interesting thing to explore, definitely. The next question we have is from Amit Maheshwari. And Amit's asking that why are there so many sampradayas today? Is it okay not to follow any particular one and just believe in Nirgun Brahman?
Yes, so this goes back to the idea of pluralism. Hinduism is intrinsically pluralistic. That's just embedded within Hinduism. So that's natural for there to be many different sampradaya, different sects within Hinduism, and they all sit well together. There's no sort of infighting and I'm better than you and all of that. Everyone just does their own thing. And even within the same family, you get, a grandmother who may love the mother goddess, you get the son who may love Krishna and the grandchild who loves Ganesh, and they don't fight about it, they just get on with it. That's just the way things are. So I think that's a wonderful thing, and it spreads to not just the sects within Hinduism. You don't even have to have any sect within Hinduism. You could have no sect, as you were saying, Nirgun Brahman. If that's your pathway, then go for it. And it doesn't conflict with anything of the other sects. And you just sort of carry on in your pathway and get to the same destination at the end.
Fabulous. We have one question from Lokesh. Lokesh Yadav is asking, what is Samadhi?
So Samadhi is, it's the seventh step of the Raj Yoga process, and it's that culmination of spiritual experience you get after a lot of hard work in the whole meditation process. And Patanjali lays out in his 8 steps of Raj Yoga, all of the sort of mental disciplines that you need to sort of accumulate in order to be able to even sit down to meditate. So he talks about things like yam, niyam, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana. And so there's lots of wonderful things that you have to sort of achieve in order to be successful in meditation, right down to, are you truthful through word, thought or deed? Are you celibate? Are you clean through thought, mind and body? All of these things which are very difficult to achieve, but when you get there, you'll hit the jackpot, and that's what Samadhi is all about. When you get to Samadhi, you are essentially an enlightened person. So it's not a joke, and your life will be completely transformed, and you will have the power to transform the lives of those around you.
Wonderful. We have one question from Vishnu. Vishnu is asking, is it possible to know about my past life? And how would I practice the process of realization?
So some people are able to spontaneously remember their past life. Dr. Ian Stevenson, as Dad talked about, he sort of cited many examples of 3-year-old children who are able to remember their past lives in vivid detail, and they're proven to be correct because they can check back on the records. But for the vast majority of people, they're not able to remember their past lives. And it's probably a boon to not remember, because having those memories of all the people you've left crying in your previous life is really going to tear you apart in your current life. You'll have your current family, but then you'll also remember your previous family, and you won't know where you stand anymore. So in a way, it's probably a boon that we don't remember our past lives, and it's better that we just focus on making spiritual progress in our current life. So it's probably best to do that rather than try and sort of regress and try and think about where you have come from before.
Fabulous. So we have another question from Purna Chandramondal, and Purna is asking, what's moksha? Please explain so I can understand it in a simple way.
So moksha comes from two Sanskrit roots, moha and kshaya, which means the destruction of delusion. So it's the delusion that you are your mind, your body, this little person who's living this little life. So it's the destruction of that delusion that you think you're living this current life, but essentially none of it really matters ultimately, because when you hit the jackpot of samadhi or realization, you will realize that you have just been living in a dream state. When you sort of hit that level of consciousness, you realize your true self, and you sort of look back and you're like, oh, I was living such a piddly little life. I feel glorious now. So it's one of those things that when you get there, your life is completely transformed, and you can transform the lives of those around you too.
Fantastic. We are almost coming up to the top of the hour. We've got about 10 minutes left in today's broadcast. And I just want to take a moment to appreciate everybody who's taken the time out of their busy lives to join us on the live today. The questions that have been posted are so very interesting. Some of these are even questions that I would be, keen to find out the answer on. So thank you very much for sharing those with us today. We have one question from SP, and he's saying that, or asking, how can I perform prayers if I consider God as a principle? He often finds that people around him ask God for things. But he can't put that into perspective of God because he looks at God as a principle, not as a personality.
Yeah, so this is the thing. When you have God with form, you sort of build a personal or human relationship with that particular form of God. It might be the mother goddess or Krishna or whoever it is. And it's very easy for people to sort of pray to that form of God and say, please let me do well in my exams, please let my mother get better, or whatever it is, because you're sort of treating that form of God as a sort of source of guidance and a source of comfort. But essentially, even Krishna talks about the different forms of bhakti, the different forms of devotion. And you get people who want to ask things from God, but they are not the supreme devotees in that sense. The supreme devotees are the ones who do not ask anything from God. They just ask for God alone. And those are the highest rank, in a sense, of devotees. And essentially, even if you don't believe in a form of God, if you prefer to think of God as Atman or Brahman, as your true self, I guess the way that you would sort of make progress is not by worshipping that form of God, but by meditating and focusing inwards and sort of trying to discover who you are. And even things like community work, that's also a form of sort of linking with spirituality in the level of the community. So that's everyone's entitled to their own particular way. And the highest devotee is the one who asks nothing from God.
Absolutely true. Now, it's been interesting. I've been talking to people about, joining us on Facebook and on YouTube, but silently, we've been also streaming on Twitter. We do have a really good following on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is Hindu Academy. And the next question is actually from a viewer who's watching us on Twitter at the moment. And the question is from Libra Metal, and it is, what is the difference between humans and God?
I would argue that there isn't a difference, essentially. According to Hinduism, we are all a manifestation of spirit. We are all Atman. And it's just a case that we have forgotten that we are God. We are Atman, essentially. It's like sort of looking in a mirror which is covered in dust and dirt. that's the nature of our spiritual progress. We have to clear the dross, clear the dirt and the dust from that mirror, and then we sort of see who we truly are. And with the way we sort of clear that dust is through the variety of different ways of making spiritual progress that we have within Hinduism. God with form, God without form, work in the community, whatever it is. So we clear that away and we sort of see a true reflection of ourselves.
I was going to say this is a trick question because I remember what Jeba used to say, the underlying thing which we cannot comprehend or cannot see, understand at the moment, is essentially the same. Yeah. So you're with one, we just expressed in a different way. So yeah, fantastic. It's great to explore these kind of topics. Great to try and get a grasp on it and understanding these kind of things a little bit better. So folks, we are almost at the top of the hour for this. Before we close, I'd like to just say that, we have some resources for you. If you want to explore this topic after the live session, please do head over to our website, which is hindu-academy.com. Over there, you will find we have got a Basics of Hinduism course. It is free to join. We have almost 7,000 people. My goal is to get to 10,000 in a couple of months. So please do help me share the course if you enjoy it. And secondly, we've got some ebooks on Hinduism. These ebooks have been used even here by students who are sitting for their Cambridge exams for Hinduism. So they are really well put together by Sita and Jebai. And those are available freely for you as well. Now, if you want to come on this live session, but virtually, you can do so as well. Go to our website, which I said, hindu-academy.com. There'll be a QR code. You can scan it and you can record a video message. Just keep it to a minute and ask your questions. And we'll present your video question here live on the stream and try and answer it as well in the next week's session. So, Sita, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up for today?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to everyone for all your amazing questions and really thought-provoking, concepts that we've sort of discussed today. And I hope that you found it useful. There's so many wonderful gems in Hindu philosophy, which can really enrich all of our lives. And hopefully this kind of sessions help us to explore it and develop ourselves better. Further.
Absolutely. So folks, remember today's focus topic was understanding the law of karma. So do visit the YouTube channel and you'll find there are plenty of videos that you can view and explore this topic in full detail. Now, as always, I'd like to close with the quote from Swami Vivekananda. And today's quote is very relevant to the topic. We were talking about character being the thing that you need to develop. So the quote is, neither money pays nor name, nor fame, nor learning. It is character that can cleave through the adamantine walls of difficulties. So that is what we are all striving to achieve, is a good character. And with that, I'd like to wish you all a great week ahead. And we will see you next week on Saturday at 2 o'clock again. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.